Hey, I got a question for y'all. You nervous? You've seen this room get set up today. Are you nervous about what's about to go down?
Definitely shaking in my boots.
Because you should be. Because up front we have a splash zone. I got an Nalgene full of water. I got a cap on it for now. For now. He works for now. So choose your seats as you see fit. Choose your seats.
Why don't you take the cap off? Oh, you have to. Never mind. Never mind.
We observed the same thing, right?
Never mind.
Yeah, choose seats. Actually, you can get a Chromebook. You can have it out.
Wait,
While we're
Chromebook
doing
and
notes.
splash?
Well,
That's pretty smart.
I'm going to make a movie Chromebook before the splashing happens.
Not one of my brightest moments there.
I didn't know you ever had one of those.
No, was I supposed to do it? Oh, I got the music, guys. I got the music.
She got to dance.
One, two, three. Splish, splash, I was taking a bath. All about a Saturday.
Got my rain jacket.
Yeah, I got my rain jacket. Relaxing in the dark. Thinking everything was alright. Well, I picked out the door, put my feet on the floor. I wrapped the towel around me and I opened the door. And in a splish, splash, I jumped back in the bath. I was out and know there was a party going on. Freedom with the meter, moving and moving, rolling and it's showing. Yeah, big bang, I saw the whole gang. Landed on my front room. Woo! They was doing a bop. All the jeans had the dancing glove. There was a lollipop with a baggy suit. The gala Miss Molly wasn't even there too. And in a splash splash, I forgot about the bath. I went and put my dancing shoes on. I was sitting at the splash, feeling with the finger, moving and the groove, rolling and the stroke. Hey!
I can get a Chromebook and have it out while I'm doing splash zone. Choose your seat accordingly. Choose your seat accordingly.
It's my fault. I start the song over. Watson,
Come on in, knock y'all. Yeah, what's up? Hey, it's the trio. What's good?
Make sure that passed their test.
Choose your seat accordingly. Go ahead and get a Chromebook. Go get a good Chromebook. We'll start with the Chromebook, and you can follow along.
Just for fun. Where's the splash zone?
From New York, in the little theater on 44th Street, just past the Broadway. It's time for me to fun and excitement with your favorite performing artist. And your Saturday night host, Big Boss.
Accordingly, you may notice I have a rain jacket on if that affects your decision.
Big Boss, let's go.
Oh my God.
I'll just like sitting there.
One, two, three. Splish, splash, I was taking a bath. All about Saturday night.
Warren, you may notice I have a rain jacket on. So go ahead and choose your seat accordingly. Go ahead and get a Chromebook and follow along as we go.
Around me and I open the door. And in a splish, splash, I jump back in the bed. I was out and know there was a
Nervous? I'm nervous for you. Make it clear, I'm nervous for you. Y'all ready to be? I
forgot about the bed. I'm waiting to put my dancing shoes on.
Got those Monday feel goods? Hold up. Woo! Hayden's there. Yeah. Does anybody notice that I have a rain jacket on?
We've noticed.
Okay. Does anybody notice the so-called splash zone?
We've noticed.
You've noticed. She's noticed. You know what, Haven? Just like make it fair. I think I need to extend the splash zone out. So now you're in the splash zone. I hate to do the splash zone. Now, to be clear, to take away all your anxieties, I will let you know before the splash zone becomes active. And if you choose to move back at that time, I'll let you know before the splash zone is going to go active. Now, some of you may choose to move into the splash zone because Landon was like, it's a little hot in here. I might want to go to the splash zone. So I am going to take my jacket off until that time because I'll be sweating bullets otherwise. But yes, we have a splash zone today. You can I already put the notes on your table for you. So what's our topic of the day?
Cold War!
It's not. If it's so cold, how come we just won't go put a jacket on?
Why is it another war?
If it's a cold war, how come it just doesn't go put a jacket on? All right. So I'll tell you where we've been. That's dad joke of the year.
Yeah.
Dad joke of the year. I'm gonna tell you where we've been. I'm gonna remind you. I'm gonna tell you where we're going. Some of you are like, I thought we were done with units. Nope, we got one more. I'm gonna tell you about it, and I'm gonna tell you like what to expect for really the next 2.5 weeks because I have to be gone for some of them. Wah. Not my favorite time of the year, but I gotta go do our grill. Is what it is. So I'll tell you about it. Now, first of all, yesterday, what was yesterday?
Easter.
Easter is an internationally recognized religious holiday. Even if it's not your tradition of faith or your personal faith, you still kind of recognize that it happened because so many other people observe it. Here in the South, okay, Bible Belt, America, Southeast Georgia, a lot of you went to church yesterday and celebrated Easter.
I forced my parents.
No matter what you believe about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, history does say a man named Jesus Christ walked the earth. History does say a man named Jesus Christ was executed on a cross by the Roman Empire. And faith, that's up to you, may say that he rose again and rescued the world. So that's what I personally believe. That is for up to you to decide as well. But I did make a post on Google Classroom yesterday that a handful of you noticed. So, and I did get a couple of favorite responses. Here's what I posted on Google Classroom. If you have it on your phone and you get an alert, you won't miss out on these fun little opportunities. Here's the picture I posted. What are we looking at? That's not a bomb. We got World War II era soldiers. They are African American, and that would mean that they're in a segregated unit. Little interesting side fact. But what do they have written on these bombs?
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs for Hitler. Does that mean they're going to scatter them all around Europe and Hitler's got to go find them? No, not exactly. Very similar to what I said about the atomic bombs. They had some stuff written on it on the men of the USS Indianapolis. Same idea here. Time-honored tradition of soldiers writing things on the projectiles. Take it all the way back, really, even to catapults and the large stones, or even arrows, right? Archery. Sometimes archers would write, coming at you. Send their arrow over to the enemy. So a time-honored tradition, obviously kind of relevant because it's about Easter egg. I got 5 of you that responded to me, and I have to say Hayden's response was my personal favorite. So Hayden, coming at you. Hayden said, a lot of y'all said bombs or missiles or artillery, and that's correct. But Hayden said the U.S. was dropping bombs on Hitler, and the U.S. was saying the bombs were eggs, and Hitler could go find them, and he would die. And I just really like that response. So who else I got? Gage. Some of these eggs aren't filled. I'm sorry. Gage. Taylor. Bridget. Where's she at? There she is. Oh, she moved into the splash zone. Awesome. Get that, Taylor. Sanaa. Y'all responded real fast, too. Those of you that did respond, you responded real fast.
Did I respond?
Landon. And Hayden, you already got yours, right? So well done. I appreciated your playing along. And if you have it on Google, if you have your Google Classroom on your phone, you will never miss opportunities like that. Now, also, you guys are congratulating everybody that played the game. Also, we did take our test on Friday, and I know that some of you still need to. So here's my announcement that if you need to, you've got to. All right, you got to come and find me. I am not going to let you do it in this block. I've got too much information to get to. Right, I got a splash zone set up because I got to teach you something. But you can take your test first, second, or you can take your test in your not block, okay, your third block, so first, second, or fourth. If you need to come before or after school, you got to let me know. I got things going on in my life as well. So before school and after school, I'll stay for you. I'll accommodate you if it's a day that I can. So you've got to take the test. There were so many of you, I didn't even make a list yet. I'm going to check my list at the end of today. And also PSA, I'm dying from allergies right now. So if I sniff real big or cry, it's not because of something Landon did. You got to take the test, all right? Those of you that did take the test, I can already award this because you can't go higher than a 100. Claps for Broadley and Landon. Claps for Broadley and Landon. Come on up, you two. Come on up. From the prize locker, I've got black and gold, or I've got blue and gray. A little bit of a, yeah. Up front, Landon. Up front. Which do you choose, black and gold or blue and gray? It's a little mask or headband. Black and gold. Oh, black and gold. All right. Hey, real quick. Open it. I gotta send a picture to the person that sent it to me. You're like, thanks for sending me prizes. Who's someone in the Army? What it is? So what these are, and I've been giving these out every test. These are for ROTC programs, 2 different ones, and it is just obviously a little face mask or headband. Probably stand right here. Stand right here. Landon, act normal.
I want to be in the photo.
Oh yeah, all y'all will be in the photo.
Oh.
Everyone, top performer. 1, 2, 1, 2. Wait. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Don't make that weird. Okay, cool.
Well, you told us to take a picture.
I'm always for some more swag. I'm always trying to get swag. Woo! Speaking of, I'm smoking hot already. What? I did not do that type of analysis yet. There's so many that haven't taken the test yet. But so what he was asking about is the way I've kind of showed your scores before. Who would have made a 1? Who would have made a 2? I can tell you this. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I think I can get it close. On the EOC, the comparable. Now it's difficult because the EOC does not give you a traditional grade. It gives you like 142 or 179. But here's how it compares. Essentially, on your traditional 100-point scale, 93 and above is a 1. I believe it's like 86 to 93 is a 2. And then 75 to 85 is a 3.
The other way?
Yeah.
The other way. Thank you.
What?
4, 3, 2, and then a 1 is something like 72 and below. I did that off the top of my head, so I know that I'm not sure I quite got the numbers
That's
right.
passing though.
But
A level 1?
so here's what I owe you. You put me on this. Hey, you put me on the spot there, and I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I confused you. I will show you how the EOC goes based on traditional scores. Again, if it's a multi-part question or it's like choose the best 3 out of 5 or whatever, sometimes it doesn't give a traditional like 100-point grade, but they do have a comparable scale for like if you make a 93%, it gives you the 4, right? They give you the 4. I did say it backwards. So Hayden, I'll do that analysis for us as soon as more people have taken the test. Darn near half of you didn't take the test on Friday, so I'll just do that when there's more people. But here's my quick analysis. Big improvements. Big improvements overall. There's a couple of questions where maybe some of you went for the distractor. We'll continue to talk about test questions and how to use the process of elimination. But overall, big improvement. I think on the smallest of level, y'all were energized for our review games. And I think it goes to show that when you're into the review, it's going to help us overall. I know we had some fun in the gym running back and forth with the flashcards, but don't neglect also the study guide and the notes that you take in class. I think you guys have finally arrived, even though it's Unit 4, a little bit late maybe, we've arrived at what it looks like to take good notes, to study hard. Some of you have been crushing it the whole time, but some of you have really turned the corner. Good job. Be proud of yourselves. Boys, where you at? Be proud of yourselves. Be proud of yourselves. All right, here we are in Unit 5. Unit 5 is called The Cold War in the Modern Era. Cold War is going to start us pretty much at the end of World War II, right? The previous unit took us through World War II. So we're in the world after World War II, and I'm going to take us all the way up to Barack Obama. Our class stops there. Some of you are like, how come not Trump and Biden? Our class stops with the election of 2008. However, I will give us some learning on the president, like the closest to us. Go ahead, Andrew. Trump and Biden. Okay, so that's where we're going. When we talk in the Cold War, we're talking this period of tensions. I'm going to show you the definition in a second. This period of tensions between the USA and USSR, or commonly today we know as Russia. It is incorrect to say Russia, right? It is not Russia at that time. It is the United States of the Soviet Republic, USSR. So I may say Russia, even as a history teacher, it still may slip out of my mouth, but I do not mean the present day Russia. I mean the USSR or the Soviet Union. All those words mean the same thing. And then I'm just showing you a couple pictures up front. We are symbolically represented in this whole unit as we talk about the Cold War. Anything that we see red, white, and blue or Uncle Sam, that is going to represent the United States. Capitalism, democracy, the free world. There are more countries involved in capitalism, democracy, and freedom than just the United States. But of course, we're in a U.S. history class. So we're focused, when we see Uncle Sam, we're talking about capitalism, freedom, democracy, the United States. Or when we see a bear or red, it'll be referring to the USSR, the Soviet Union, Russia, communism. So that's kind of our dividing line in the Cold War. And then, of course, we're also going to slide into the modern era, and I'll tell you what the shift in all of that is. So here we are in the Cold War. What is the Cold War? Well, it is a period of tension. This is your definition, right? Nice, tidy definition up front. Period of tension between the U.S. and the USSR after World War II, generally speaking, the years of 1946 to 1991. This is the so-called Cold War era. So in terms of presidents, that's going to give us Truman through Reagan. Reagan ends the Cold War. So this long line of presidents right here were all in office during the Cold War. And then it is only the few presidents since then, we've got four of them, well, 4 on the wall, but 6 of them total, that have been in the modern era or after the Cold War. It feels like I'm getting a half step ahead of myself. Don't worry about it. I'm going to tell you the whole story. Telling you up front how long it lasts, and then I'm going to start breaking it down, tell you all the things that happened inside of it. Now, since you have the computer in front of you today, I'm just going to kind of keep flowing. And since I got a fair amount to get to, if I skip here, if I move past something, it's on the screen in front of you for that reason. I would ask of you, don't slide ahead of me because you're going to miss what's coming out of my mouth. But it is there, so it's closer to your eyeballs. You don't have to strain to see the screen. All of those reasons. I think it's a method that works, which is why I'm allowing you to have the Chromebooks. Cold War. Major concepts inside of the Cold War include Brinkmanship, containment, the Truman Doctrine, and the Marshall Plan. I'll talk about each of them. Also includes the nuclear arms race, space race, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. So these are the big packages that we're going to be talking about when we say, what is the Cold War? Now, the Cold War is an international issue. What is international?
Everybody.
There you go. Yeah, around the world. So we've talked a lot in our history about America first, stay at home, do not get tangled in foreign affairs. Well, we're in a new day. We're in a new period of American history where we are an international community. We're part of the international community. And the problems that we're going to have are between nations, not between states, not between sections, not between fellow Americans, but between other countries. We are certainly not going to talk about the kumbaya, it's a small world after all type of circumstances. We're going to talk about the issues between nations. Because there's an old newspaper phrase that is, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's dramatic, if there's death and destruction, that's what makes it on the front page of the newspaper. That's what we're talking about in our course as well. I'll try to give you the good news along the way, but we're definitely kind of focusing on some of the dramas that happen along the way. Right now, and for a couple days, we're talking about international issues. We will then bring it home, and we're going to call those domestic issues. What does domestic mean? Yeah, at home. Maybe I already gave it to you. If the police get called to someone's house late at night because mom and dad have been fighting, someone's getting arrested for what? Domestic violence or abuse or whatever. So I just give you that word. I don't want to talk about anyone's DV arrests, but I give you that word so that you can know domestic means at home. For about 2 days, we're talking about international issues outside of our borders. Then we're going to be talking about domestic issues at home inside our borders. I believe that's on your page as well. Just a simple definition is all I'm looking for. Kind of already set this one up, so here we go. The Cold War presidents, 8 presidencies, Truman all the way through Reagan. Reagan is largely credited with ending the Cold War, so we'll stop it there. And then the presidents of the modern era, our class is going to talk about the 4 on top, Bush through Obama. And then I will throw at you a little bit of Trump and a little bit of Biden because it is the history that is nearest to us. It's the history that you've seen unfold before your eyes. So even though it's not in our class standards, even though it won't be on the EOC, and I will alert you to that, this Trump and Biden is not on the EOC. I'm going to throw that information at you because you're learners, because you should want to know about it. So I'm going to throw you a little bit of Trump and Biden information as well. All right, let me remind us where we left off. How did we get here in the first place? What was this picture depicting? End of World War II. Who do we have on the screen?
U.S. and Russia.
An American soldier on the left, a Soviet soldier on the right, and what are they doing?
They're hugging.
They're hugging because the two armies have finally connected in Berlin, the Battle of Berlin, the fall of Berlin, the end of Hitler, and thus the end of World War II in Europe. Yay, things are good. For about how long? Yeah, sarcastically speaking, for about 5 minutes, because we're going to fall into what? Remind me about this. This was just on your test, and if those of you that haven't taken yet, you might want to perk up on this one. Yeah, sectioning off of both Germany at large and then Berlin itself, which is inside the Soviet sector. This is a post-war administration of Germany. Yay for us that we collaborated during the war. Boo Hitler, he's the loser. But now we got to decide how to the victor goes the spoils. How are we going to administer Germany after the war? And what you have is 4 different sections, but it really breaks down into 2. The capitalist side, which is west, and then the communist side, which is east. And in this picture, red represents Soviet, represents communism. So you got communist-controlled Germany and capitalist-controlled Germany. And then even inside of Berlin, they break it down even inside of Berlin, which this is where we get the Berlin Wall, dividing the city in half, free versus communist, the idea of democracy versus communism. So this is where we're at. This is where I left you off. Hopefully that all sounded like a review. This is now the world heading into the so-called Cold War. In blue, you have NATO countries. And to this day, NATO is certainly in the news as it relates to Russia and Ukraine. So the blue, you have the NATO countries. United States is in blue. Capitalism, democracy, and freedom. Yay for us. And then red, again, there's red representing communism, representing the Soviets. You can see how much geography this encompasses. You can see that literally this is a divide of the northern hemisphere all the way around the world. It wraps the whole globe. And in fact, certain portions, I don't have any of my sticks, certain portions of Russia darn near touch the United States. This is where Sarah Palin, governor of Alaska, can say that I can see Russia from my backyard. Part of Russia darn near touches Alaska, which is a United States. And then certainly there's this border in Europe where some Western European countries literally touch the boundary line, the border line of communism. So this is the setup for the Cold War. This is where we're going. Clearly, we got conflict on our hands. It's us and them. It's right and wrong. Nobody wants to think that they're the bad guy, but yet here we are straining against each other in not a shooting war, but a Cold War. Actually, that leads me right into my next point. So Cold War, Haven says, oh my God, another war. Sanaa said it lasted 50 years. Let's distinguish between a couple terms here. These are not write down terms as much as it just is. Make sure you know what we're talking about. A hot war would be AKA a shooting war. And not many people say it's a hot war as in to say like they're shooting at each other. But like think about it. A hot war is a shooting war, traditional war, active military hostilities, open conflict between nations. No pretending about it. I'm at war with you. This is a shooting war or a hot war. We're going to talk about the Korean War and the Vietnam War. These become shooting wars. These are hot wars. A proxy war, on the other hand, Could be a shooting war, but a proxy war happens when a larger power, I'm pointing at us, the United States, a major power uses a less powerful country to express their beliefs. So again, Korea and Vietnam, we're going to see that the United States uses South Korea and then also South Vietnam. Should be really easy to remember because we're always supporting these southern countries. We use South Korea, South Vietnam to express our bigger beliefs. If South Korea wins, then capitalism wins. If South Vietnam wins, then democracy wins. On the other hand, if either of those countries fall, then the communists win. So the bigger country itself really only does a small portion of the fighting in a proxy war. Now, when we talk casualty count, the number of Americans who died in both Korea and Vietnam, it seems like a big war. But really, a proxy war, we got the other countries to do most of the fighting for us. And then that leads me to a Cold War. So a hot war, we're shooting at each other. A proxy war, I'm using someone else to do the fighting mostly on the behalf of my ideals. A Cold War is characterized by these four big things. First, tension. And that is a part of the definition that you've already written down. This 5-decade-long season of tension between the United States and the USSR, the Soviets. Almost like if you sneeze at the wrong time, the world could blow up. So tension. Secondly, spying. Spying was happening inside both countries, all around the world, even outside of the United States and the USSR. Both types of spies were looking in at each other. So tension, spying, competing. We see this expressed both good ways and bad ways. And we're going to talk about both of these topics extensively. But one type of competition that I would call a bad competition is the nuclear arms race. Who's trying to get more nuclear bombs? Well, that's bad for the whole world. But now, having given that to you as an example, can you think of a good competition?
The space race.
Excellent. Why is it good?
Because we got space.
Because we got to. Who's we? Who's we? Who's we?
We didn't win.
Humankind. So you guys are saying a couple things. I would argue the space race is a good competition because humanity grew science, technology, and landing on the moon. Now, yeah, the United States won the space race by getting to the moon first, but I would argue that all of humanity benefited from the science and technology that came during that time. Okay? So competition. And then finally, this is Swanson's work. You will not find this in a textbook. You will not see this in some academic symposium, but this is Swanson's word for a characteristic of the Cold War. The fourth component is peacocking. What is peacocking?
Like showing off. Like showing off.
Strutting, showing off, just like a peacock does with its tail, trying to look bigger and probably fatter than you are. So not a super academic word, but clearly it seems like y'all understand it. Characteristic of the Cold War is peacocking. And I think that this one particular meme just really sums it up. This is the Cold War, guys. Absolutely no one initiated it. But here we have both countries just spying on each other, looking on each other, tensions, competitions, and peacocking, just like these two security cameras are just staring at each other for no good reason. So this is the setup to the Cold War. And if you really need just a terrible way to remember it, you can always ask yourself, if it was so cold, how come it doesn't just put on the jacket? So if it's so cold, how come it doesn't just put on the jacket? Someone give me a rim shot. Put on. All right. It's a terribly, terribly bad dad joke. Here is something to consider. Okay, y'all some deep thinkers in this room. Here's the different perspectives that came out of the Cold War. So looking at, let's look at the left-hand side, or the right-hand side first. Okay, the bear represents
The
the Soviet, right? Soviet Union. They are kind of growling over the whole country, or the whole world. If you follow the arrows, where is the USSR meddling? Where are they? In Africa, in China, in Afghanistan. Okay, the Russians got to Afghanistan before the Americans did. Vietnam, Korea, etc. And then who's the other individual in the picture? On the small side.
Uncle Sam.
It is Uncle Sam. So with the size of the two characters on the right-hand side only, what do you think the picture is saying?
Bad. Communism.
Big bad communist bear. And little bitty Uncle Sam, he's just trying to do the best he can in the world, and that big bad bear is dominating the world. Oh, but wait, Take it to the other side of the picture. Maybe I should have covered them up. But take it to the other side of the picture. My, how the turntables turn. What do we have here?
The same thing but different.
The same thing but different. More.
Because we're the big bad now, and then the baby bear is just like.
This time it's Big Bad Uncle Sam and the little bitty cuddly teddy bear just trying to mind his own business all throughout the world. Can you see the different perspectives? We think we're the good guy, just trying to do the Lord's work of democracy and capitalism throughout the world, and the big bad bear is getting in our way. They think, hear me on this, it's hard for us to understand because we sit here in America. They think that they're the good guy, doing the Lord's work, whatever Lord they serve, throughout the world, trying to spread communism. And it's, history will show that communism is bad, right? History will show that communism is not the better way to live. But at the time, both sides saw themselves as the good guy. Both sides saw the other as the bad guy. So very different perspectives on who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's right, and who's wrong. Here's another, it's a picture here, but also the idea of brinkmanship. So brinkmanship, if I take you to the brink of something, where am I taking you?
The
Edge. Excellent. So the picture here, obviously we have an individual taking us to the edge of a cliff. The idea of brinkmanship is that both sides, USSR, brought each other to the brink of nuclear war time after time after time, only to back off in the nick of time. We're coming to the brink. Ooh, maybe this is it. We're going to blow each other up. Detox, negotiations, settle back down. Coming back to the brink of the cliff of world peace. Only to go back again. So brinkmanship is this rise and fall of tensions across this 5-decade period. I was being a little dramatic. 5-decade period of the Cold War. So I don't think this is not on your notes. I'm just telling you a little bit more about brinkmanship. President Eisenhower, and I'm going to mention several different presidents, trying to do it in order as much as possible, but being such a long time period, the different presidents chime in at different times. President Eisenhower, he actually threatens massive retaliation in the event that the Soviets take us to the brink. His idea was that we need to rely on deterrence, not on defensive power. We need to peacock so hard that they actually believe that we're going to use our bombs versus having local deterrence power. Hopefully this would deter a Soviet strike. If they believe that we will retaliate massive retaliation, well, maybe that'll be enough to keep them down anyway. It's like playing a big game of chicken. This is not a good thing for anyone to do, certainly not little kids, but have you ever played chicken with a car in the street?
Yeah.
How do you play chicken with a car in the street?
You drive it on their side until they give up.
Okay, I hadn't even thought of that one. You drive.
I
I was thinking of a little kid like standing in the road while a car's coming at him and then sliding out of the way at the last second. Yeah, okay. Hear me now, young people. This is more disturbing than I even knew. Don't play chicken. Don't play chicken.
It's even better when you play with the full one.
But how about this? On the world stage, Chelsea's telling me things I don't want to know about. On the world stage, this is like a massive game of chicken. But it's not with four-wheelers. It's not with automobiles. It's with what? Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons, yeah. So basically, the idea became, this is a phrase that's important. Now, it's not on your notes, but you got to hear this. Mutually assured destruction. What does that mean?
That, listen, if you try to destroy us, we'll destroy you.
Can someone write that down? Because I love that phrase. Listen, if you try to destroy us, we're going to destroy you right now, too. Right? Exactly. Anna Kate said it perfectly well. If one bomb is fired, then, dear Jesus, hear me now, on my mother's grave, that's what they're saying, I will send my whole arsenal back at you.
Yeah.
Guys, check this out. We literally would have blown each other off the face of the earth. If multiple nuclear warheads were sent around the world at the same time, we could have knocked the Earth off of its axis of orbit. I'm not the science guy, and I have to ask McGuire about planetary orbit and all that kind of stuff. But I do know that if the Earth gets knocked off of its axis, tell me about the story. Tell me the world your grandkids are going to grow up in.
They're not going to
We literally could have blown each other off the face of the planet. This is mutually assured destruction. And it was enough in the end. Now, there's some very scary decades, But in the end, it was enough to keep us from blowing each other up. It was the idea that I can harm you and you can harm me was enough to keep anybody from firing the first bomb. Another really good picture here describing brinkmanship. It's like arm wrestling while sitting on a bomb, while your partner has his finger over the bomb, all at the same time, right? You destroy me, I'll destroy you. Bet it up. Bet it up. Did you write your phrase down? I love what you said.
I did not.
Okay.
Who's the president?
Yes, so the American president is Kennedy. That represents John Kennedy. And then I believe it's Nikola Karashkov.
But no,
It's a lot of
no,
Russians, but the U.S. president there is Kennedy.
I know. Yeah, that's
Not Gorbachev, that's later.
that's the one I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, no. So for every U.S. president, there's a Soviet premier that kind of lines up with that man. Now, our presidential cycles were not identical, but generally speaking, for every U.S. president, there's a Soviet counterpart. And Kennedy, and it's like Nikita Karashnikov. I should know better, right? Gorbachev, seems like some of you know that name. He's associated with Reagan. And he's actually the first Soviet premier. He's the Soviet premier.
Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Reagan. What are you supposed to say?
Reagan.
Pocketbook, shopping cart, purse. All the words y'all chipped at me for. Reagan. Ronald Reagan. Anyway, I'm moving on. And then here's one more, just something to think about. I like this one because it does represent some collaboration. What do you see here? What are the two men talking about?
They're trying to push down the box.
Yeah. Hey, let's get a lock for this thing. But wait for it. Who created this thing? America. They both did. I mean, arguably they both did. Yes, we dropped the first bomb. But as the nuclear arms race continued, both countries created this thing, but now we want to put a lock on it for the good of humanity. So lots of things to think about there. An amazing period of time to analyze pictures and political cartoons, etc. All right, a little bit more for you. I'm going to go kind of fast. I feel like you've written it. You guys have a grasp on writing things down, but I want to just explain things along the way. Cold War ushers in a brand new period in the United States. No longer are we following George Washington's advice and precedent set to stay out of foreign entanglements. Up to the Truman administration, the United States really was not the first to get involved in international affairs. Now, did we get drawn into a variety of wars? Yes. Even sometimes did we make up reasons to get involved in that war? Like remember the Maine, remember the Lusitania? Yes. We got involved in international issues, but we did not start them. This is the first occasion where, breaking with Washington's precedents, that the United States is the initiator of getting entangled in alliances. So up to this point, U.S. involvement in wars, for the most part, had been a reluctant last resort, and that is no longer the case here. The United States did not take a leadership role until foreign affairs until after World War II. Pretty much everything I just said. We got drawn into issues, but we did not start them. However, President Truman recognizes the United States, the importance of the United States in preventing harm around the world, our responsibility to prevent the spread of communism. If you're going to be a superpower, you've got extra responsibilities. We have arrived as a world superpower, and that doesn't mean we just get to sit at home and have a good life inside the United States. The attitude of the president, now some people could disagree for sure, but the new attitude of the president is that America has a responsibility to protect around the world. And let's make it relevant to us at home. A safer world is a safer America. If we protect around the world, we are essentially protecting at home. No longer can we be isolationists. Now we're involved in the world at large. Leads me to the Truman Doctrine. If you haven't gotten there yet, it's time to write some things down. Truman Doctrine states this. Purple's a pretty good start. The United States would support any nation threatened by communism. Very broad policy, very broad doctrine. Now, you should remember it's called the Truman Doctrine because he's the one that came up with it. If you ever write foreign policy or international United States policy, you probably need to name it after yourself. But he comes up with it. He's president at the time, so he names it after himself. This starts in 1947, but it is going to be around for quite a while. Is an expression that the United States believed communism would infiltrate Europe and other of our friends, our European friends who were weakened by World War II, right? They've been broken, they've been bombed, their cities are rubble, they're down for the count, they're broke, they're in debt. It is a right time for communism to sweep on in and take over Poland and Switzerland and Belgium and even our friends in the United Kingdom, right? While they're down, while they're hurting, communism could sweep in and take over. That's what we want to avoid. That is definitely what we want to avoid. Pretty descriptive picture here. So we got the virus of communism. We've all learned a thing or two about viruses recently, haven't we? Yeah. What have we learned about viruses recently? They suck. Okay. I'll set school. Huh? Get you out of school. Probably not what I was going for. They spread, and how easily? Very easily. So communism being described as a virus here, and I think you all should understand viruses based on what we just lived through. It shows that virus could spread to England, France, Germany, and a variety of others. So here we have the Truman Doctrine floating high above those broken battlefields, right? We're not trying to get our hands messy. But what is Daddy Truman sending from his hot air balloon high above the sky?
He's giving out money.
Money. The Truman Doctrine is all going to be about financial support of our friends who have been damaged and hurt by World War II. So Truman issues a warning to the Soviets that the United States was prepared to use any means necessary to contain communism. Now, any means necessary, that's going to be important later on down the line. But initially, it was all money. And for example, you can see the headline here. Truman sends $400 million to Greece and Turkey in order to support their rebuilding and in order to support them against communism. Now, $400 million in 1950. Anyone want to take a guess as to what that is today?
8 mil.
8 mil? Wait, what is 800 mil? Okay, so indicating when we double. Huh?
It's in the billions.
1 billion?
Probably.
A billions, a couple of billions.
4 billion.
$400 million in 1950 is $4.7 billion today.
Oh my God.
So a pretty significant example of giving money to our friends in Europe. What else I got here? Brought a new approach to foreign policy, aka international issues. Remember, we're talking about international issues today. Instead of isolating itself, now the United States is taking that leading role in containing the spread of communism. And just like to prevent the spread of COVID, we covered our faces, we kept 6 feet. Sometimes we stayed at home in quarantine. Well, we're also going to have a methodology. No, it's not as simple as just covering your cough. But we're going to have a methodology for how we're going to help our friends in this post-war era. New precedents have been set. That is a big, important takeaway, is that a new precedent has been set that we are going to lead in preventing the spread of communism, not just sit back and avoid the foreign entanglements as we have in the past. So I think you guys are on the right track up to this point. We're coming on containment right now. Containment began. Now, it's a part of the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine was several different things underneath the umbrella of the Truman Doctrine. Containment is like a play out of the playbook. If the Truman Doctrine is the playbook, this is a play out of the playbook. This began by President Truman in 1947. It was one of the first plays run under the Truman Doctrine. We're going to give economic and military aid to our friends in order to prevent the spread of communism. I pull up this half of the picture because this was our attitude at the time. The big bad bear is trying to spread all around the world, and we're just little bitty Uncle Sam trying to do the best we can. We've already looked at the other half of the picture that shows Uncle Sam as the aggressor. This idea of containment aligns with the so-called domino theory. And actually, domino theory is not just a nice visualization. I know you all think about setting up dominoes. If you knock over one, they all knock over, just like the picture there. Yes. This wasn't just a word picture. It was actually a foreign policy. It was a specific strategy in foreign policy. This is the domino theory of containment. The idea was that China is communist, right? China has fallen to communism. We know that. Well, communist China is going to topple Korea. Korea is going to topple Vietnam. Do those two locations sound familiar? Yeah, we're going to talk about our involvement in those two a little bit later on. Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Burma, India. This was actually the order that the United States believed these countries would topple. We've lost China. We know China is communist. But if we don't get a grip in China, we're going to lose Korea. followed by Vietnam, and on down the line. I think you guys know we fight a Korean War, we fight a Vietnam War in order to prevent exactly this. So containment fits into this idea of we want to get ahead of the dominoes falling. Containment, here's that nice tidy definition. United States policy using numerous strategies to prevent the spread of communism abroad. Abroad means around the world. It becomes our main foreign policy approach all the way up until 1991. So this isn't some short-lived attempt at a policy. It wasn't just around for 3 years and then we tried something else. This is our foreign policy all the way up to 1991, and that is actually President George Bush when the Berlin Wall itself comes down. The USSR breaks up and the Berlin Wall comes down. That's how long containment is one of our policies. At first, it was applied to Europe. Coming off of World War II, our European friends and allies, they needed help not falling to communism. But it is going to extend to the Middle East, Asia, and even Latin America as well. That's why it takes us all the way into H.W. Bush. He uses containment strategies all the way into Latin America as well. We won't talk about those too much in depth, but just summarize it to say this is a big thing, a big attitude that our government has for a very long time. A couple of pictures here that kind of depict containment. The idea is that we're going to draw a line. Certain countries are communist. We know that, right? USSR is communist. China is communist, right? Their neighbors are starting to get gobbled up. But we got to draw the line somewhere. Are you willing to let these neighboring countries get gobbled up? Do you remember what happened when we let Hitler do that in the 30s? Right? The world remembers that. So we got to draw a line. How far are you willing to let communism spread? No, it ends here. It stops with me. Another picture here that really plays into kind of the fearful attitude that this might come all the way to America. Is this tomorrow? Is America under communism? What stands out to you?
The fire.
The fire. What does that kind of imply?
That makes dying.
Dying? Yeah, well, what is commonly associated with fire?
What is it?
Hell. Hell itself, right? America under communism would be like hell on earth. Yeah, they're dying. They're coming for our women. They're coming for our children. They're going to come for your job. If communism comes to America, it's going to be like hell on earth. Hell on earth. Does that rhyme with hail? Does not rhyme with hail. One more here. Now, we've seen octopuses before. Octopi, octopodes. What does the red octopus do? What does the red octopus do? Yeah. Oh, an egg? Yeah. Well, what is it? It's gobbling up the whole world. This is as if to say that the red spread of communism is like an octopus that could gobble up the whole world. What does this remind you of in the past? How have we seen an octopus used in the past?
What was that? The oil.
Oil, yeah, the robber barons of oil. Same idea that they are going to extend their slimy little tentacles all around the country. Well, in this case, we're using an octopus to demonstrate that it's going to gobble up the whole world for communism. Red implies what? Bad. Communism. Yeah, anytime you see red, you got to think communism. So here's a byproduct of all of this. A byproduct of all of this is that the United States becomes a global cop. By pledging to protect the world from communist expansionism, we basically become the world police. Or sometimes it's called a globo cop. America globo cop. Leads to a very terrible movie that came out in 2006, and I hope you haven't seen it, but if you have, you may recognize Team America World Police. America, heck yeah.
Can we watch
Coming
it?
to save the day. America. Okay, this is containment. This is containment. Now, to make sure, this is a real movie, it's terrible, and I hope you don't go watch it. To make sure that you never forget containment, here comes the splash zone. I would ask you to move Chromebooks out of the splash zone, or at least just close them. Close them so that the plastic is up. If you wish to come into the splash zone, you may do so. If you wish to move out of the splash zone, you may certainly do so. So, we've got all right. This is so that you will never, and I mean never. Chrissy, close that Chromebook for me. Same thing with papers and whatnot. Chrissy, you don't want to close that binder. Trust me. Trust me. Alright, this is a demonstration so that you will not forget. Containment.
I'm sitting up there.
What is containment?
Keeping something in something.
Alright, yeah, okay, keep something from spreading.
What
So
about yank it?
in my demonstration here, this bottle is the Soviet Union. Okay, this bottle is the Soviet Union. What is inside the Soviet Union? Not water. What's inside the Soviet Union? Communism. This is communism inside of the Soviet Union. And when my bottle does not have a lid, what can that communism do?
Spread.
Spread all the way around the world. This is communism. This is communism spreading around the world. Yeah. What do we know about communism? We know that it's already gobbled up certain countries. Communism has gobbled up Hungary. Communism has gobbled up Slovakia. This country falls to communism. Communism has gobbled up Albania. Albania, come back to me now. Communism has gobbled up Albania. Albania is inside of USSR influence and control. Now, communism has spread, but check this out. If I try to snatch Albania from communism, what has happened to it? It is dripping with communism. I cannot rescue these countries from communism. There is, in fact, a story of freedom fighters inside of Hungary trying to rise up against their Soviet overlords. They're trying to rebel against the communism. Doesn't that sound like something that the United States would want to be a part of? Wouldn't we want to support freedom fighters in Hungary?
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem with that. The problem with that is that if we reach inside of communism and try to rescue Hungary, what comes out? Communism spreads. So once a country is inside of communism, we recognize that it is lost. Containment is, don't miss this, containment is the lid. Containment is the lid that goes on top of communism. With containment policies, break it down real tight. With containment policies, what does communism not do?
It doesn't
Spread.
It doesn't
It did spread.
any
It
further.
did spread.
Now, on the out, so the bottle is still the USSR. I told you that we supported Greece and Turkey financially. Greece and Turkey may be on the border of communism, but where are they not? Not in communism. So containment is the lid. And I told you, can I help countries that are inside of communism? Why not? If I do, that communism is free to spread. So that is why America did not get involved in events like the Hungarian uprising. If we had, it would have been seen as an act of war, right? Once the lid goes on, the lid cannot come off us. So rather, we put a lid on communism. Containment is the lid, as the Truman Doctrine says. Somebody clap for them. That was really great. We'll go ahead and hit the pause button there. Go to the bathroom like usual, while I kind of clean the room up. Is there any coming back? Is there any coming back from that? Communism everywhere. Communism. So good communism.
I have a cake.
Go forward.
I did think through this.
Are you sure?
Risking your brain and staying on the
I wouldn't splash.
very brave.
This is
If
ridiculous.
anybody wants to help me, I won't say no. You did it to yourself.
Yeah, it did.
That what you expected? That what you expected, Mark? I'm not sure what I expected. I think it worked.
Can I check what I made?
I'll get you later. Not right now.
What you?
Something. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody.
I had an
Don't tell
accident.
anybody. Yeah, definitely had an accident.
I'm with it.
I can't do it.
It's cold in here.
Land until straight.
No, that sounds silly.
Oh, so that's it.
Yeah, you are. Where we're going.
Like your siblings want?
Yeah, one.
I had a
His friend.
Who? Carson. Who's his friend?
I don't know.
Why is cold again?
What is wrong with you?
What is wrong with you, kid?
I didn't even do anything.
He cracks himself
Okay, like
up.
I tell Aiden. Y'all see it? I couldn't get, but enjoy my dad's.
God is good. God is great. God
How can I make this?
You're a goat.
Hey, someone said it's
What?
so
A
bad.
goat? It's cold in here, guys.
Okay.
Turkey.
You did not clean it up with.
What's that thing where it's like, what we all do? It's like, and me and Rita were like, what are those? And
You can read it.
I started going
It's disgusting.
Okay. Energize.
Yeah.
Come on, Eric. You got it.
I have sprinkled around some paper towels here, there, and everywhere.
2, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is yours.
This is yours.
All right, find where you were. Get your notes back. Strong books are fine again.
It's kind of chilly in here.
Yeah.
Ready? 1, 3, 2, 1. What are you doing?
You should not forget that this is a container, and containment is, I'm not gonna do it. Containment is the lid that goes on communism. This is gonna stay in the room. Like so many things around the room, if you open your eyes and look, no, this is gonna stay in the room. The contain, actually, I left it for the, like basically all of last semester, and it didn't. So we'll see how it goes. My point is, the item is in the room. If you need to look around and get a little bit of a reminder, a container, containment, right, on communism. Puts the lid on communism. Now, that was just one play out of the playbook. There are more. Let's talk about them. Next up is the Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan lasted a whole lot less long than containment. Containment lasted all the way till 1991. Marshall Plan really just lasts 4 years. It's a 4-year strategy. United States program of economic aid for the reconstruction of Western Europe. Who was in Western Europe?
Germany.
Our friends. Our friends.
Germany is not our
Who
friend.
had been destroyed, beaten, battered, and bombed out in World War II. Our friends. So same idea here. We want them to rebuild. We want to be their friend. We do not want them to fall into communism. Well, tell me about this. Are you going to be friends with the guy that gives you money or the guy that comes in and just tries to take you over?
No, the one that gives me money.
You're going to be friends with someone that gives you money. So the Marshall Plan is an economic plan. I want you to think Marshall and money. M&M, Marshall, money. Now, it's named after the current Secretary of State, George C. Marshall. The picture you see here is when he was a military man. Okay, the Secretary of State is a civilian, but he was a 5-star general in World War II. That's actually the highest rank possible across all time in history. We don't even have 5-star generals anymore. We only have 4-star generals. But you see the rank on his shoulder, that's actually 5 stars. He was one of just a couple of 5-star generals. He proposes the so-called European Recovery Plan. I actually wish that's what it was called because that makes a lot more sense. European recovery. It's a plan for European recovery. Man, that makes a lot more sense. But that's not what it commonly gets called, especially in terms of our standards, and probably the exam is going to call it the Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan, money, European recovery, that's the connection you got to make. And the whole purpose of it was to fix the negative things that had happened during World War II. Bombed out cities, knocked down buildings, broken down churches and government structures, all that stuff. Let's fix it. For our friends in Western Europe. 2 major aims. 1, prevent the spread of communism in Western Europe. And 2, stabilize international politics in a way that was favorable for the spread of democracy. We really saw it as that we were purchasing the future of democracy in Europe. If we're going to give $1 million to a country like Greece, or just there's a lot of examples. If we're going to give $1 million to a country, yes, Greece is a country. It's also a stage play from the 1960s, but whatever. Grease, let it go. Grease, let it.
Yes.
Sorry, just kidding.
I can't stand that.
Second plan. Second part of the plan. I got myself off track. First part of the plan, prevent the spread of communism. Second part, basically, we are setting the conditions for democracy all around the world, even if we have to buy it. Hey, we're giving money to Turkey and Belgium and Luxembourg and Switzerland and fill in the blank. Well, since we gave them money, that gives us the opportunity to come on in and try to influence them for democracy. So the 2-pronged attack: prevent the spread of communism, try to set the stage for democracy in these other countries. Over the 4 years of the Marshall Plan, Congress spent $13.3 billion for European recovery. $14.3 billion. Do some quick math. I don't have it written down, but I think times 4 is basically the number. Turn that billions into basically darn near a trillion.
Trillions.
Darn near a trillion, yeah. It is 5% of the U.S. GDP at the time. 5% of our national budget at the time got spent on other countries. By comparison, just so you know, today we spend about 1% of our budget on foreign countries. All the money that we do give away, and it seems like we give away a lot of money, it's about 1% of our country's budget. Well, this was 5% of our country's budget. So a whole lot of money being spent on other countries. Sam, get on the right screen. Money aided 22 European countries in total, so it wasn't just one country, wasn't just our BFFs like England. Go ahead. Aided 22 countries overall. I'm going to show you a map of that here in just a second. And the idea was that those who received money from the Marshall Plan were going to avoid becoming satellite states of the Soviet Union. It was either us or them. Either these countries are going to follow the Soviets or they're going to follow us. And by gosh, we're going to make sure that we give them enough money to follow us. And then the Soviet Union did not want American financial influence over their things in Eastern Europe, so obviously we had to get there first. This is the big idea. 22 countries were aided by the Marshall Plan. Here's a pretty good political cartoon. Whatever the weather, we only reach welfare together. Or if you're watching High School Musical in 2006, you're probably going to say, we're all in this together. Yeah, that's how I see it, right? We're all in this together. We all struggled during World War II. We all got bombed out by the enemy. Well, now we're all in this together in terms of recovery. Here's a really boring pie chart that shows who got the most money. You can see that the money was issued disproportionately. It was not divided by 22. It was not the same amount of money given to every country. Our besties, our BFFs, is that how the kids talk? Is that a word? BFFs?
That's such a word.
BFFs, okay. Our BFFs got the most money.
Our dogs.
The
Say our
United
dogs. Say our
Kingdom,
dogs.
our top dogs got the most money. United Kingdom, France, Italy, etc. But it does trickle on all the way down to 22 total countries. I like this map a little bit better. It shows the dollar bills stacked on top of each other to represent who got the most money. So clearly we can see that France has a tall stack of dollars. United Kingdom has a tall stack of dollars. You know what? Portugal got a couple. Iceland got a couple. Italy gets a lot. Austria gets a medium amount. Yugoslavia gets a little. Turkey gets a little. Point is, it was not equal distribution of money. We did play favorites a little bit, but, you know, that's reasonable. We gave the most money to the countries that aided us the most, and that would aid us the most going into the future. So, what's the cutesy way that you can remember this? I already gave you a mnemonic. What is it? Cutesy way that you can remember this. Marshall and money. Money. I would write that down if I were you. Marshall and money. What? First question? Did I have a question? Marshall and money. All right, write that down. Marshall and money. How funny would it be if I just like bid it, like in transition?
Yeah, like, well, I don't know.
All right, you got Marshall and money written down. We got the Korean War. We got Douglas MacArthur left for today. That's all we're doing for today. Okay. The back page of this. You know, everything that's left on the page here is going to be for tomorrow.
No, I'm not.
All right, here we go. So containment in action then. Let's see containment in action. Remember the domino theory effect. China is communist. Do I need to demonstrate what happens with communism? When you come over to
Get back.
What?
Pour it on Austin if you're going to
China is communist, right? China is inside the bottle of communism. But we do not want it to splash out and affect Korea, Vietnam, and on down the line. So containment in action is going to lead us to the Korean War. Let me remind you of this definition. I've already said it in this class period. But a proxy war is when the major power, that's us, the United States, uses another country to express its personal political beliefs. Like we wanted to make sure South Korea did not fall to the communists. We want to make sure they stayed capitalist. However, the United States itself is going to do a very little bit of the fighting overall. So, containment in action through the Korean War. Now, tell me what you know about the Korean War. What's your like upfront stereotype of the Korean War?
Upstairs, downstairs.
North
We kind of
Korea.
didn't win.
We kind of didn't
No
know
one
that.
won.
Korea, upstairs, downstairs.
No one-
Demilitarized zone, that's big. Where have you seen the Korean War on a television screen?
They've got a potty mouth.
Where have you seen the Korean War on a television screen? Anybody?
Never.
Have you ever watched the CW late at night and seeing reruns of MASH?
No.
This is the Korean War. The Korean War was not as popular of a war. Hey, come on, there's a lot of chatter. Korean War was not as popular as World War II. And then on the other side, Vietnam and then kind of getting into the modern era. Korean War is actually a lot of times it's called the Forgotten War. A lot of times it's called the Forgotten War. So it doesn't have as many movies or TV shows or documentaries made out of it. But MASH is set in the Korean War. MASH is a comedy. If you're watching MASH, you're definitely seeing not exactly history, but you're seeing a comedic version of it. However, it does have a fair amount of truisms in it. And if you're going to be watching MASH and you want to pay attention to the history side of it, I would encourage you to do so. All right, the Korean War, here we go. Fought between 1950 and 1953. Holy cow, didn't we just finish a war? Didn't we just get home from war? Why are we involved in another one here? Because of containment. Oh, Landon, that's onto something because it helps the economy. So here's the two sides of the Korean War. The communists had support in the north, and then the U.S. supported the south. North Korea, South Korea, and there's a divide right down the middle of this Korean peninsula. I'm going to show you a map here in a second. Called the what, Haven? What's the divide?
38 parallel.
38 parallel. And she says with a very straight and kind-spirited face. 38th parallel. Now, to call it a war is actually incorrect. Why should we not refer to it as the Korean War?
Morally. Such a great question.
That's a great question. I have the answer. I'm curious if you do.
That's a great question. I think you should.
Yeah. Why do we call it the Korean War when we shouldn't?
You got it.
Guess what?
I think you got
We
it.
never actually declared war in Korea.
What?
Technically, it is a police action. We were acting as the world. Yep. Well, like keeping law and order. Police. Technically, it's referred to as a police action. And to this day, this is going to blow your mind. Everybody do it. To this day, we have not declared peace in Korea. To this day, it is an open conflict. And the only thing that keeps war from happening between North and South is the demilitarized zone at the 38th parallel. I'll tell you all about that. But now I'm going to refer to it as the Korean War. History does refer to it as the Korean War, but you can be smart enough to know that that's inaccurate. It should be referred to as a police action. Here's some details about it. Korean War. So the fear was that there'd be a total communist takeover of Asia, starting in North Korea, flowing through South Korea, taking over the whole Korean peninsula. Already showed you the dominoes effect. We obviously weren't going to be able to let that happen. We're living under a policy of containment. This is going to be the first time that we see containment in action. Super brief history of the Korean Peninsula. So before World War II, Japan annexes Korea in 1910. You might argue that the World War II started really long before hostilities were declared in 1939. Japan is clearly gobbling up territories in the South Pacific as far back as 1910. Japan rules the Korean Peninsula all the way until the end of the war in 1945. Well, World War II ends. How do we split it?
Down the middle.
Much like we did in Germany. We have, right? Since the Soviets are our friends at the time, the Japanese in the north surrender to the Soviet army. The Japanese in the south surrender to the United States Army. This kind of lends to a natural divide. Let's just divide the country in half. North is administered by the Soviet Union, and south is administered by the United States.
Yes.
How do we decide to divide it? At this so-called 38th parallel. So the 38th parallel is just a line of latitude.
Yes.
There's not a mountain range there. There's not a river there. There's not even a break in the sidewalk there. It's like the what? That's exactly right. 5440 or fight, 3630. It's just a line of latitude. So that means that it has to be patrolled. That means that they have to guard this 38th parallel, communist to the north, capitalist democracy to the south, divided at the 38th parallel. This is an important boundary even to this day. So I'm not teaching you history at this point. I'm teaching you current events. Let's find out more. The Korean War. So I'm going to give you the simplest summary of it. Not a military class. We're not going into a whole lot of tactics and strategy. Just trying to give you the large application. The North invades the South in 1950. Can we, the United States, stand for that? No. Why? Containment, right? We put a lid on it. We've got to draw the line and not accept that the North invades the South. So the U.S. supports the South in order to contain communism. And to summarize it in the broadest summary possible, I wish I had time to tell you all the individual stories about the Korean War, but I don't. To summarize it in the broadest way possible, each side advances and retreats several times over the next 4 years. Here's the Korean War in 4 maps. Korean War in 4 maps. 1950, we're divided at the 38th parallel. North invades the South. September of 1950, the North, represented by red, darn near has the whole Korean peninsula except for this small foothold maintained by the United States. November of 1950, we fight back. We go into the North. You see that the colors have flipped. The United States and allies darn near have retaken the whole Korean peninsula. But in July of 53, we find ourselves almost right back at the Korean or the 38th parallel. And this is how it will remain for the next 3 years. Couple months of intense fighting, June and July basically, with some back and forth. But once we arrive right back at the 38th parallel, this is where it stays for about the next 3 years. It's called a stalemate. You ever open a box of crackers, bite into one, it's just a little bit right? It's not good or bad, it's just That's what a stalemate is. Soccer girls, where they at? The game that I attended, your senior night, is Abby not even here? Obviously, I didn't take attendance here. Thanks for raise right there. The game I attended, right, which ended in penalty kicks, that game was a stalemate for most of the game. A lot of back and forth with no big goals being scored. Now we went to penalty kicks and finished it. I would argue that your playoff game was probably the same since it had to go to penalty kicks. A little bit of a stalemate, back and forth. Just trying to bring in a sports story to you, an application to it. This is how the Korean War will stay until 1950. Key personality inside the Korean War. So now you ready? This is Douglas Macarthur. Anybody want to guess where he went to college?
West Point!
West Point graduate, class of 1903. He was number 1 in his class. He actually comes back and he's the superintendent from 1919 to 1922.
Superintendent of what?
Of the academy. He's the president of the college. Superintendent, just like superintendent of our school district, he's the superintendent of the military academy, which that means he's an army officer. He stays in his, he's an army officer inside the academy. Long story short, Douglas Macarthur, he fights in World War I. He fights in World War II. He's a key player in World War II. I know we didn't talk about him, but he's a very key player in the war in the Pacific Theater. Well, now he finds himself as the leader of both U.S. and UN, United Nations, troops in Korea. Douglas Macarthur, he's known for a lot of things. One of them is his corn cob pipe. The picture you see there, he is smoking a corn cob pipe. This guy always had this corn cob pipe in his mouth. He was always chewing on the end of it or puffing some tobacco from his corn cob pipe. But if you look at him, this is a very representative picture. Like, this is a very iconic photograph. Well, tell me what you know about Douglas Macarthur just based on his photograph.
It looks funny.
Very confident.
Confident. Huh?
Just not man.
Confident.
Looks like he
Tough.
ride a horse.
Would you want to cross paths with Douglas Macarthur?
Yeah.
Douglas Macarthur was a soldier. All right, hey, whatever's going on, stop it.
It's like,
Douglas Macarthur was a soldier. What you got, Chandler?
I don't know. He's just too confident.
Too cocky, maybe borderline cocky. I like it because here's what happens. He wants to use atomic bombs on North Korea and China. He says, hey, Mr. President, which is still Truman, we've got this new technology. It ended the war one time. I remember that because I was there. Let's do it again. Truman, to his credit, I know a lot of y'all, we read the primary sources, a lot of y'all feel like that it was bad to use the atomic bombs in the first place, and Harry Truman is responsible for a lot of deaths. Harry Truman, to his credit, says no, not again. We should not use atomic bombs all the time. We should not make a common practice of it. We are not, hear me, not going to use atomic bombs in North Korea. Well, here's where it gets real iffy from a military to the president perspective. Douglas Macarthur, even though he's a 5-star general, he's one of those few 5-star generals, he publicly goes against President Truman. Is that following the chain of command?
That's embarrassing.
It is not, right? The president is the top dog, just the boss. Even a 5-star general is underneath the president. So Macarthur, he disobeys Truman publicly. He says things in the media that basically go against the president, basically shows insubordination. And there's a lot to it. You can make a great leadership case study on it, and I have done that with my Army ROTC cadets, but you're not Army ROTC cadets, so I'll just simply tell you, Truman fired, right? People get fired from jobs all the time. even 5-star generals. MacArthur got fired by Truman. He gets replaced. I will say that this is not his lasting position in American history. He is not seen as just the general that got fired by MacArthur over this disagreement. And to this day, a major building at West Point is named MacArthur Hall because of him. He has a statue at West Point, and that is 19-year-old Cadet Swanson standing alongside him. So, yeah, 19, I think. I was a freshman, so 19 years old. Anyhow, General MacArthur, very important figure in American history. Could have talked about him inside of World War II, but we didn't. I'm bringing him to you now, and he adds to the list of West Pointers that we talked about this semester as well. All right, a little bit more. The end of the Korean War. So after all this fighting, all this back and forth, it ends in a stalemate at the 38th parallel. Korea remains divided to this day, and North Korea remains communist, isolated, and dangerous to the war on the world stage. North Korea is a nuclear power. But we, all of us, the world, we have no idea how many nuclear warheads are in North Korea. They do not let inspectors come in. They do not participate in a sanctioned nuclear program. They are a wild card. North Korea, I like to call them a unicorn. Just like a unicorn, you wonder if it actually exists. Sometimes I almost wonder if the things that come out of North Korea have even a hint of truth to them. You may have paid attention to the news. You may have seen things about North Korea before. Their leader is called Kim Jong-un. He's actually called the Supreme Leader. People inside of North Korea, kind of giving you a bit of a peek inside their civilization right now, they are totally isolated from the outside world. They do not have the World Wide Web. They only have Korean-run news. So in their Korean-run news, it's literally brainwashing. They will tell the citizens that their supreme leader is godlike. He is perfect. He is caring for them. He has their best interests in mind. They will say things like he hit a 500-yard hole-in-one in golf. They will say things like he ran a 2-hour marathon. They will make up all, he's a fat dude. He didn't run no 2-hour marathons. They will fabricate. Jojo, come on in. What you got? We talk about communism. You want to join us?
Actually, no.
What you got? Okay, get some. Yeah, so the North Korea, basically a unicorn on the world stage. And very interesting, very difficult to know what's true and what's not. But I'll show you a couple things that does depict the truth of North Korea. So after 3 years of fighting, the United States, the United Nations stabilized the Korean peninsula at the 38th parallel, which, by the way, was the original border anyway. All this fighting, 3 years of fighting and dying, the back and forth, we stabilized at the original boundary anyway. And to this day, no peace treaty has been signed, and an armistice is still in place. They didn't end the war. It wasn't a surrender. An armistice is a laying down of the arms. We talked about an armistice for 11/11, November 11th. That's what ended World War I. An armistice is a laying down of the arms. So to this day, an armistice is in place. Not a peace treaty, not the end of hostilities, but an armistice. And because of that, hostilities between the two states do continue to today. So with everything I just said, is this headline from the San Francisco Chronicle accurate?
No.
Not really. Why not?
One, because it wasn't a war beginning. Two, because we never signed peace treaty.
Because it wasn't a war and it's not over, right? War is over, not true. It wasn't a war and it's not over. So I just like to point that out. I'm going to start passing something around. I got a couple more things to say, but I'm going to start passing something around. This right here is a piece of the DMZ, piece of barbed wire that is strung across the 38th parallel. It was clipped on the 50th anniversary of the DMZ, which is 2003. So it's kind of been like this little souvenir item for a long time, right? Because it's now 2022. I got a friend who's in Korea. The United States Army still has troops in Korea, in South Korea, ready for war. There are military forces in South Korea that are ready to defend in the event that the North does cross the 38th parallel. Could it happen? It could happen. Do I think it's likely? I think it's unlikely because of mutually assured destruction and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to pass this around. This is legitimately something that was at the 38th parallel. Obviously, it's kind of become a souvenir item right here. It's barbed wire. Please monitor this piece of plastic. It's just kind of taped on the back, but you don't want that coming out, and then you have some real barbed wire on your hands. But just, I don't know. I like to connect with history. I like to hold artifacts in my hand. And this is an artifact. This is simply the box, but I'll start the box on the other end here. There's a little bit of a paragraph. You can read about it. So start these two items going both directions. When they meet in the middle, just keep it for me for a second. The story continues, and here is how that story continues. No United States president set foot in North Korea until Donald Trump. Donald Trump in June of 2018, I believe. June of 2019. This is Donald Trump doing an unprecedented thing. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what you think about the man, for him or against him. The fact that he was willing to meet with Kim Jong-un, this is Kim Jong-un, he does not run a 2-hour marathon. The fact that he met with him, he shook hands with him, and he stepped across the 38th parallel is unprecedented. Do you think it's good or bad?
I
Good
think it
move or
was
bad move?
great.
Good step in the right direction.
Yeah,
Why?
it is.
I would argue. Anyone
Not
else?
get attacked.
I don't know.
What?
I just think that we need, that's like
So that's North Korea?
keeping your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah,
Oh, Chandler's
amen.
got a great phrase. A lot of times the idea might be keep your friends close, but your
Enemies even closer.
I'll give you this. I think talking is better than not talking.
Yeah.
I think communication is better than
Talk
closed
it out.
off. So it is, like I said, it is unprecedented that this happened. Look at this wall of presidents. Truman to Obama did not meet with North Korea. And then, I don't have Trump up there, I know, but Donald Trump was the first one to take this literally an unprecedented step across the 38th parallel. And that's where that barbed wire may well have come from, right about this area, right on the 38th parallel. Pretty cool. Now, the story does continue further. Not much progress has been made, but and obviously Donald Trump is not president anymore. But because that communication opened up, I take that as a positive step. Now, let me show you, I bet you can spot North Korea from space. Some of you have done this exercise before. I bet you can see capitalism versus democracy from space. And you know what they say, is picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm not even going to say anything else. So you go ahead and decide where's the capitalism and where's the communism. First things first, this is the Korean Peninsula, okay? This is like a Google Maps, Google Earth.
That's at nighttime.
You tell me where's the north and where's the south.
Yes, that's lying.
That one's probably most poignant to me. South Korea, backed by the United States, the ideas of democracy, capitalism, and freedom is a thriving democracy. You can literally see the 38th parallel. Can you see that line?
Yeah.
You can literally see that line of latitude, the boundary, and then to the north, when they say the lights go out, they mean the lights go out. Many of those regions may not even have electricity strung to them in the first place. You can see the capital city. This is Pyongyang, the capital city. No riches, no luxuries are spared inside the capital city.
Listen, there's me right there.
Feels
in the
like-
middle.
You put it wrong spot.
Yeah, no, that's
You're
a
right.
picture. Yeah,
You're right.
right
Touche.
there.
That's
Yeah.
Okay, question.
Thank you, Taylor. What?
Like, can you pick which one you want to go to? Like, can you travel over the border?
So, great question. Very limited ability to travel to North Korea. Americans are under an advisory to not do so. If you want to, you have to go through a whole series of questioning at the State Department in order to get a visa. Recently, this is so weird, I don't know why this is the guy that did it. Very recently, Dennis Rodman has traveled to North Korea a couple different times. He's actually he sat down and talked with Kim Jong-un. Dennis Rodman is as weird as it gets. So it kind of, he was a basketball player for the Bulls in the 90s. Dennis Rodman is kind of a weird cat. But he has broken the silence. He is definitely not representing America. He is not representing American foreign policy or politics or anything like that. But he has been able to travel to North Korea and meet with the North Koreans. Every now and then, some Christian missionaries will try to go into North Korea, sometimes at great risk for themselves. Sometimes they'll be captured, they'll be imprisoned. Maybe we never hear from them again. So it is unadvised to travel to North Korea. And Chandler, do you get to decide which side you want to be on? No. Much like the boundary of the Berlin Wall, this side belongs to the Soviets, this side belongs to the Americans. Same thing. You can't cross the border freely. That's right, wherever you're born. Now, are there exceptions out there? Is there something that I'm not aware of? I don't want to speak in totality, But yes, by and large, where you are born is where you stay. That's exactly right. Great question. This is why I call it the uniform. It is hard to understand what happens in North Korea, much less in a 10th grade classroom. Like the world itself doesn't understand what's going on in North Korea. So I would encourage you, it seems like some of you have some curiosities, I'd encourage you to be a reader. If you have questions, I'll try to find an answer or answer it to the best of my ability. Round it out here with the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. Often called the Forgotten War, it does have a memorial in Washington, D.C. Let me tell you my personal experience of being at the Korean War Memorial. It's a very, it's a very unique memorial. It is not huge and majestic like the Lincoln Memorial. It's not a wall like the Vietnam Memorial. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Basically, it's a group of about 30 soldiers on patrol, almost like they're frozen in time. I do remember on one of my trips to Washington, D.C., it's one of my favorite places to go. I've been about 7 times maybe. So it's just one of my favorite places to go, and I like to share that with you. One time when I visited, it was a little bit low light, and it was foggy. And my dad and I, we walked up on the memorial not knowing that we were boom right there. And it was almost like we got caught in time with these soldiers on a patrol in the fog. And if you start to look at the soldiers, you see a lot of details. You see the guy with the radio. You see the guy with the compass. You can see that they're wearing their ponchos because it was cold. And especially visiting there on a January day, it was cold. And we could see our breath. It was almost like they were frozen in time, and we had just walked up on them. This is when I got to go, January 2021, President Biden's inauguration. I've told you that story several times. So, Korean War Memorial, even though it's the so-called forgotten war, our country in recent days has done well to remember it. Korean War veterans are older. They are dying. They are passing from this earth. If you find yourself in the same room with a Korean War veteran, I would encourage you, one, certainly thank them for what they did. Thank them for going somewhere that they didn't have to go and freeing a people that they never even met. Think about that. A lot of this fighting that happened on behalf of freedom and democracy was for people that the soldiers would never even meet. They were fighting for South Koreans that they would never even meet in this lifetime. But we believe in democracy and capitalism so much that that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. So if you're ever in the same room with the Korean War veteran, strongly encourage you to try to get a story out of them because it'll be worth your time. So that is day 1 of the Cold War. How'd we do?
Good.
We got a mess on our hands, but I think it was worth it. Here's what's up next. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about more containment in action, the Vietnam War. We're going to see how brinkmanship, how we go to the brink over and over and over again. Mutually assured destruction. I will bomb you off the face of the planet if you bomb me first. We're going to talk about the space race. We're going to talk about the nuclear arms race. We're going to talk about the United States in Cuba as it relates to the nuclear arms race. So I'm going to do something right now that I thought I would do tomorrow, but I think we got time for it right now. Just tolerate me briefly, which you have to do. You do have to tolerate me. I was going to do this tomorrow because it talks about the Vietnam Wall, but I do know that tomorrow's kind of a lengthy class as well. I got a demonstration involved as well, so I'm going to take the 10 minutes we have here to show you this quick video. And maybe you've seen it before, maybe you haven't. You're going to see the Vietnam Wall, which, keep in mind, that's tomorrow's conversation. Then you're also going to see the Korean Veterans Memorial as well.
Hey, Rick, here at the Vietnam Memorial. Behind me, I'm standing at
Really windy right is what it is.
Beginning of the wall. The wall starts in 1958. It rises 50, and then it concludes 1970. That is saying that American veterans who fought and died of their wounds in the Vietnam War, 1958 to 1975, the total number is 58,275. I'm fortunate to say that I don't have any known family members on this wall, but many Americans do. Many Americans come to visit here. It's very solid.
And a handful of memorials left at the bottom. I see a couple of St. Church pamphlets around the 1900s. If you ever have a chance to go over here, you should not turn it in. You see the names are etched. A lot of people bring paper and stencil over these names. Raymond Spindler. Say a man's name, he is remembered. See a beautiful reflection. On down the way, it culminates the Washington Monument. These are some books. It's like telephone books.
58,000 names on the Vietnam War.
These help you decide or help you find a specific name. So alphabetical order.
No known relation as much as I would know.
You're looking at now is the wall, which I've just left, just a short ways away, is this trio of soldiers. It's dedicated to all who fought, served, and died, and just died after the war, whose names aren't on the wall. And I've been to this many times before, but I'm struck by the detail in the statue. There's a lot of truth in these details. Uniforms are very specific. There's actually a Caucasian male, an African American male, and a Latino, Mexican American male soldier depicted in the statue here. You see their uniforms are actually green, which would be true of the Vietnam era fatigues. You see a lot of accuracy in the weapons, the bullets. I'll zoom in a little bit here. And then something in particular always stands out to me. I visited Washington, D.C., and I visited this memorial in 7th grade, and we walked up on a tour guide, giving a tour to a group of people, and he was a Vietnam veteran. He pointed out the way that this man's hand is gently touching his patrol leader, probably his squad leader. And what he pointed out from his personal experience is how just a gentle touch, gentle human touch could calm your nerves or take away from a tense situation. Let you know, I'm here. I got you, buddy. We're all in this together. Like I said, see the details, see the weapons, see the bullets. I even see there's a gas mask and a helmet in the canteen. A lot of accuracy. I'm going to zoom in here now.
Time our country is very divided by race, by status. This trio of soldiers represents a white guy, black guy, and Hispanic guy. Pretty powerful. This spot right here, this simple statue of this trio here, one of my favorite pieces, my favorite parts of Washington, D.C. For all the memorials, the monuments, this trio, this statue of 3 men right here is one of my favorites because I came to it first before I was in the military, before I was a soldier, and I thought it was cool. Right? I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to be an Army Ranger. And now I come to it after having been that, after having been in a war, after having led troops in combat. I really understand what's going on with the statue a whole lot better. I understand the looks in their eyes. I understand that light touch, hand on the back of the squad leader, and understand the equipment a lot better. So this is one of my favorite pieces of Washington, D.C. I'm glad I figured it out. Here's the Korean War Memorial. Imagine just walking up on that when it's a little bit foggy.
Korean War Memorial. I gotta say, I feel like I've been on this combat patrol before. Ponchos, the chin strap unbuckled, there's the radio man, head on a swivel, danger all around. I'll say this memorial is very, very eerie to come to at nighttime when it's fog. It's pretty cold right now. It's a little about as right at the end. This says freedom. I'm free. Watched my video a couple days ago on Arlington Cemetery. Two of my friends, and I said, freedom is not free. Korean War Memorial right here. Does this the same thing? Bears making one more stop on my last day in Washington, D.C., and I'm here at the National World War II Memorial. Let me show you my 360. So to my left represents the Pacific Theater, and on top of that granite building it says the word Pacific. Behind me here in a second, you're going to see behind me is over 4,000 stars. Each star represents 100 American dead from World War II, so totally over 400,000 dead American World War II. This guy here, oh yeah, get it, boy. And then on this side, see the granite tower that says Atlantic. So representing both the European War and the Pacific War of World War II. And each wreath, each smaller granite pillar, has each state name. Took an opportunity to pose with Georgia. So we will talk extensively about the wars at war, World War I and World War II. And I'm honored to be here at the National World War II. On this day. Horns up. Love you.
Horns up.
One of my buddies, we just toured the city that day, next day. That's the Marines. This is where JFK proposed to his wife. Is at a restaurant, and they have that sign that says the proposal booth. Just boom right there. Yeah, for real. And then at this same restaurant, he wrote his inaugural address right there. It's still there. The seat is still there. The table it's a mess. But that's where JFK wrote his inaugural address. Lincoln Memorial. Hey, Georgia. So that's the World War II Memorial where they have every state listed. Sanaa, this is why she's my favorite. She said, "Ooh, I want to go." Yes, class trip to Washington, D.C., right? That'd be lit. That would be lit. So I hope that, I'm not sure I can take you. I don't know, maybe someday we schedule a class trip or something like that. But I do want to, oh, it's supposed to be queued up better than that. Come on. All right, last little bit here, a little bit of a laugh line. We've had a good class. I'll let you decide who's the hero and who's the villain. I'll let you decide who's the winner and who's the real loser here.